Sven, is your administrative group going back? Have you been back at the office?
Yeah, since we were a fair amount of our team were frontline, we never left.
Yeah.
And I asked for special permission to stay near my printer.
Yeah. Did you close down a number of your branches?
I think the vast majority of Maine financial institutions turned off in banking center activity. Through the early days of the pandemic, but since then they're all open, and I'm hearing word from others that that's the case. Everything's kind of fully open in terms of customer facing. Still a fair amount of work from home though, Carol.
Yeah.
This is the longest I haven't driven. I just don't drive anywhere anymore.
Isn't it weird? And then you kind of forget.
It's strange. The day out of the office is a big, exciting trip these days, as opposed to a daily occurrence.
I know. Well, I had occasion to be in Dallas this past weekend, and I got to tell you, what a different world it is.
Yeah.
Like, masks are totally optional, and the malls, everything are just like it never happened.
Busy.
Well,
it's been busy up here. Yeah.
Very disorienting though, when you're been used to being so in such solitude for so long, and then to be a part of the masses.
How are the airplanes and airports?
Surprisingly quite busy.
Yeah.
I had to travel, I guess it was early March, out to the Bay Area for my brother-in-law passed, and it was so eerie because we were like the only plane in a whole terminal of SSO, which is usually just teeming with people.
Right.
So that gives you 2 months difference.
Great, Ellen. I think we have a full. We have enough trustees for a quorum.
We do have all of our committee members present. The chancellor is not present.
He may not be joining, Ellen. He may not be joining.
Okay, then we're ready to start.
All right, great. Thanks, Ellen. Can I call the Human Resource Labor Relations Committee meeting to order? And I will ask the clerk, Ellen, to take the roll call for the meeting and remind meeting participants to please leave your mics muted when not speaking. And Ellen, if you would.
Thanks. Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Trustee Bartholomew.
Yes.
Trustee Irwin. Trustee Gardner.
Present.
Trustee Mishu.
Present.
And Trustee Riley.
Here.
We're all set.
Thank you, Ellen. Our first order of business is, could I have a motion for the Human Resource and Labor Relations Committee of the Board of Trustees to go into executive session under the provision of 1 MSRA section 405-6A to discuss the evaluation of personnel and the consideration and discussion of appointments, evaluations, employment, and duties, and 1 MRSA section 405-6D to discuss planning for the negotiations and communications with AFM, UMPSA, ACSUM, police, PATFA, and service maintenance units.
So moved.
Second.
Ellen, do you want to take roll?
Certainly. Trustee Bartholomew.
Yes.
Trustee Irwin. Trustee Irwin.
All right. Yes.
Trustee Gardner.
Yes.
Trustee Mishu.
Yes.
Trustee Riley.
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you, Ellen. The first topic, are we in executive session? Oh, let's join our breakout.
Come on.
I'm always afraid it's not going to work.
Have faith in Heather. She's amazing at this now.
I was just going to say that.
We're all set.
All right, Ellen, are we in public, the
We
public
are.
meeting now?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to introduce our first agenda topic. In your workbooks, tab 1, you will see the Workforce Profile Report 2020, and Carol will lead off the discussion. So Carol.
Thank you. These are reports in your papers that you've seen before, for those of you who have spent some considerable time serving the university system. And I'm sure it's something that you look forward to on a yearly basis, because who knows that there could ever be over 40 pages worth of data about our workforce, but there is. But I'm going to actually just draw your attention to a few bullet points. The team that keeps these reports up to date do a very nice job, and I don't think there's any question you could come up with that you couldn't find in this report if you took the time to find it. But the workforce itself has not changed dramatically in the past year. And I'll speak a little bit more to that as we get into the turnover report. But I think that the salient points about our workforce that we should pay attention to in the long term, first of all, I can report that we're at a equitable point of, although still a minority, women represent almost half of all positions, both within the faculty and the administration. So, technically we are a majority in the country, but I think we can be very proud of the fact that we have continued to recruit and promote and have more women in the faculty than you might find in other organizations. There's probably two issues that I think that warrant consideration longer term in the HR strategy that will be being developed. As we know, those are usually 3 and 5 year strategies, and for good reason, because one of the points that I see as a bit of a concern is the age of our employees, especially in our faculty ranks. 45% of the faculty is either 55 and above, and the average age is 55. So therefore, you're looking at the typical graying of America, and that is something that has to be thought about, especially if we are successful in implementing a early retirement program. That obviously doesn't mean we're going to reduce by the amount of people who leave, but it does give us a very good opportunity to be recruiting new, younger people into the workforce, which I think is key, because if we maintained our status quo, we would be faced with some really significant issues, having so many people wanting to retire all at the same time. The other point is our racial representation, although it is consistent with our state percentage, which is in the 6%, 6.9. We have gone from 6.2 to 6.9 as representation of our employees, most of which are at either UMaine or USM. So we know from previous board meetings that is clearly a very significant and important initiative on the part of the chancellor and all of the presidents of each of the universities, and I think of many of the employees, to increase our representation of people that are considered minorities. One of the challenges I think is happening too is that people don't identify as easily as they used to. They were either, Black, Caucasian, Latinx. Now you have a lot of people who say, well, I am both Latinx and Black, or I'm Latinx and white, and I don't want to be pigeonholed. So sometimes the reporting is a little bit behind the reality, but that will sort itself. The workforce has been very steady. As you would see in the turnover report, I'll just sort of blend right into that because it's an equally dense report that's done annually. But our turnover is down from 11.8 to 10.1. I don't find that surprising, especially given the pandemic, that people were probably less inclined to make moves. Half of that turnover was voluntary. And that's, I think, a shortcoming that I've realized just recently because of this report, is that we don't have a consistent way of knowing why people left. It's either, resigned or terminated. And I think it would be important for us to have a better appreciation for, more of the specifics. Is it a relocation issue? Was it a dissatisfaction with their supervisor? There's any number of reasons why people leave. And because what I realize is that 25% of the people who are hired in the course of a year leave within that year. So that's a pretty high percentage. I mean, that's a lot of time, effort, and money that is, essentially going out the door before you've even really, gotten someone up to speed. So I think we need to be thoughtful or be more curious as to why those first year turnover statistics. It could, very easily be the job wasn't represented the way or the person didn't have the skills to do the job, or, any number of things. But we haven't been consistently trying to understand what's the activity behind the numbers. So that was something that I have just asked my team to start thinking about and providing us, or me actually, the types of exit interviews that people do and what we're learning from those exit interviews, and that they just don't become a stale piece of paper the day after the person leaves. The minorities status of people leaving the first year is consistent with the amount of people we hire. So it's not disproportionate to the entire group that leaves. So that's a good sign, to the extent that, it's not as if people are coming in and just finding that they can't make a sense of community here. At least that's how I would interpret it. So that's not a red flag, but it's something that we should just, generally speaking, regardless of race, know more about why people are leaving that year. And that's really the top line of what I would suggest you can take from these reports. And as I said, for someone who is really interested, you can delve into, every category of employees, faculty, administration, hourly, and see, where people have left or what their age is, or anything, almost anything else you'd want to know about the population. These are, very, very thoughtful reports and interesting, especially given that we have them year over year, so we can really, look at trends. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Carol, quick question for you. I was looking at these reports earlier, and I'm just curious on the side of employee positions, on student positions. There's kind of a trend, they're creeping down. And do you have some of the narrative behind that? Probably the pandemic had an effect on that, but just curious if there's additional background.
Yeah, no, I think you can attribute it directly to the pandemic. We weren't active campus wide, especially in the summer. A lot of those jobs just didn't exist. So I think where we saw that was not for any other reason, just that we had to draw back our activities.
Trustee Irwin.
Thanks. Just a quick observation. I'm looking at the graph that shows student versus employee headcount over the last 5 years, which shows that the student body has shrunk by 812, but employees have increased by 120. Obviously not a sustainable trend. And I know that that's a gross number. I'm sure there's a more complicated story behind it. It might be good to see that in terms of credit hours versus just head count, because I don't know whether the head count is FTE or what. But if we look at that ratio, it's gone from over 6 to 1 to about 5 3/4 to 1, and that's just something I think we need to be very, very aware of as we go forward. That we, if our enrollment stays flat or continues to decline, that we've built in a kind of an excess cost over the last 4 years relative to where we were then, by having more employees, or a higher ratio than we had before.
Mhm.
Trustee
Yeah.
Riley. Oh,
Thanks.
sorry, Carol, I cut you off.
No, I didn't have anything really meaningful to that. I'm just, assuming that I'd have to find out more to really be able to respond to that appropriately.
Sure, I wasn't expecting a response. I just wanted to flag the issue because I think it's something we've got to pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a question on the pie chart on employees by employment category. My concern is that we have so much infrastructure for 21,000 students. And by that, I mean people, not just buildings. And the salary chart looks curious to me. And I wonder if there's a better way to show that more accurately. I mean, I know there's a benefit for us making our administrative costs look slim on administration and management, but when I read the definition of salary, they look like administrative functions to me. And I wonder if there's a way to break those out to have a more accurate picture of what this infrastructure looks like.
Do you know what number page you're on? I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
That would
track
be
it.
page 5. It's
Okay.
it's right up under the average salaries. It's at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
And it shows 42%. It shows a teeny weeny administrator management and 42% salaried. And I think to be fair, we ought to take a harder look at what those salary functions do, because they look very administrative to me by its raw definition.
Mhm.
Maybe a way, it's sort of like
I was just going to say that, the definition, the Department of Labor changed the definition of, who could be salaried or who could be hourly, and, that may have had an impact. But it's a good question. I'll look into that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any additional questions? I had one final question, and it maybe dovetails more into the workforce profile report. But Carol, can you just provide some narrative on our hiring at the system? Are we getting positions filled? Do we have a lot of open requisitions?
It's an interesting question and an interesting category. Depending on the university, yes, some are University of Maine, I believe, has close to 100 positions that are open. I don't know the categories of them. I would assume most of them are probably hourly folks, which is where people are having the most difficult time right now, attracting hourly people. We don't have an adequate centralized talent acquisition function. So I'm talking more anecdotally than I would like to. And, I know that that's a priority and we'll certainly improve upon that. But I don't think we're having difficulty attracting people. We have 2 professional positions that I'm involved in. Well, actually, that's not true. There's 4 that I'm involved in that are recruiting, excuse me, recruiting for professional positions. And we have a very healthy pool of candidates. And 2 of these were legal searches and the other 2 are HR partner searches. So I'm encouraged by that because I do think that a lot of people are wanting to come back to Maine. Many of the people that we're interviewing are, relatively young people in their careers that may have gone to UMaine. One went to UMaine Law School, and I'm sure that was probably inevitable that people, go out and stretch spread their wings a bit, and then realize that the grass was pretty green at home. But I think with the pandemic, people are seeing it as a nice place to be, to raise a family. You can get more house for your dollar than many other markets, obviously. So people are looking for more square footage to live within. We don't spend money on recruiting firms typically, other than the most senior, which I think is a wise investment. We're active in maintaining a very current way in which to, the old days of how you recruited is very different, as we know. Now it's about getting on these websites and career sites, and people are doing their job search online, not on the Sunday Times as they used to. So.
Any other questions?
Just one
Trustee
question.
Michu.
Thank you. Carol, I might have missed it when I went through the report for your, how many positions in your head count are actually vacant? And have they been vacant for a long time?
That's an excellent question. I don't have a vacancy report, so I can't answer your question, but I'd be delighted to get back to you. We do track it by campus, so I'd have to round up the group to find out exactly how long and what the aging of these different are. I know there's certain positions that are just very difficult to fill, like the police officers and so forth, but I'd be happy to get back to you on that. It's an interesting question.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion, questions, thoughts before we move to our next topic? Right. The second topic on our agenda today is tab 2, turnover analysis. And Carol, you're presenting again to us on this one.
Well, I admit I sort of I integrated the 2 of them, and I probably shouldn't have been as chatty, but I will just briefly offer that in the turnover analysis report that the key points are that our turnover is down, that of the people who did leave, more than half were voluntary, and then there was a good percentage, about 25% were people with planned retirements. So our non-voluntary was also about 25% of that number, and that's a very healthy number. I'm very pleased to see that our turnover rate is below the average of higher ed institutions by not a lot, but almost a whole percentage point. So I think that speaks to good things. I mentioned earlier that our minority status of people who leave the organization is not disproportionate of the group. So that also does not speak to any kind of issue specific, or at least you can draw a conclusion. I'm not sure it's based all on fact, but that there doesn't seem to be an issue there. Most of the UMSA bargaining unit represents the largest percentage of our population of 34%. And their turnover is 36%, which is, I think, quite high within that unit. But AFM is 24% with 21%. So, it seems like they're depending on missions. Obviously, we continue to have some turnover. And I would offer again, as I said earlier, I would like, and I'm encouraging my team to agree on a process that we can all consistently use during the exit interviews to understand why people are leaving. Many, and quite a bit, I'm sure, are for personal reasons, but if there are, it's a good way of tracking. If there's particular supervisors who are having a hard time keeping employees because of their management style, or if it's wages, or if it's hours, or, we don't have that data, and I'm surprised, quite frankly, but we'll start tracking that so that we have that information going forward. And it's a healthy report, but I think those are the salient pieces to be made aware of.
Questions on the turnover report?
Sure.
Gardner.
Yeah. Carol, would it be possible going forward to have some comparisons on these turnover numbers and this data against other university systems similar to our size? I don't know whether 20% or 25% turnover is the norm in this type of employment scenario, or are we at the high end or the low end of turnover?
Well, the source that we have used in the past is Coupa, which is a higher ed institution for compensation and data such as this. And the average turnover for this past year was 10.9%, and we're at 10.1%. Previous years, we were at 11.8%. I think that probably has, excuse me, a lot to do with the pandemic. The people weren't making changes. They were more inclined to stay put. But I had that same thought. It'd be interesting to even just benchmark within like New England. Look at UNH and Vermont, a few others. So I will add that to the benchmarking.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you.
Yeah, and even if it was a historical trend as well, Carol, over 3 to 5 year period, not just external.
Yeah, that's good.
Additional questions? It would be maybe one point too is as we see some of this recapturing turnover of staff, is there some of that effort going on? And maybe just another point to think about as we think of trying to fill open positions. Are there folks that we can boomerang back that maybe have left our graces and we could add back in over time? So that might be a strategy too, as depending on urgency.
It's true. We often do, and what we are able to do, especially in moments of short-term needs, unlike a Tracy Bigney, luckily we have good relationships with people who have left us, and they come back and they'll do, do some assignments. So the relationship that I think people keep with their former peers is, especially if they remain in Maine, they seem to be, close, but boomerangs are the best because, it speaks volumes to the people that are currently working with them, that they say, oh, so this was, it wasn't better outside. It's better to be here.
Right. And the associated training costs that we're feeling because of the turnover. That some of that stuff's pretty relevant and probably useful metrics as we continue to analyze it.
Do we actually, to that point, Chair, do we actually have a average cost of a new hire, what it costs us to fill a position and have a new employee fully up and going?
don't
I would
have a lot.
imagine, yeah, I would imagine, I mean, I'm just guessing that we probably don't have that kind of specificity. You know, there's so many different positions and what they cost, but there's certainly national data available you can tap into.
Yeah, because if we're turning over 400 people a year, it could be a big number,
Yes,
the whole system.
the time. And, you know, I have to say, not coming from a life of higher ed, I'm always surprised at, you know, the search process that we employ, and it's not just we, all higher ed institutions of these search processes do take longer, you know, so that's, you know, if you start to add in all the time that's people are spending in their day but I'm sure it probably has, you know, a good result why our turnover is only 10%, because I was with institutions that we were facing 25%. So there's probably something to be said for the thoughtful search process that is utilized in higher ed.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised it's a multi-million-dollar a year cost to fill these vacancies.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are going to naturally be there, retirements and all that. So
That's interesting.
I think it's an important topic and probably timely, Trustee Gardner, that you brought this up. And it, you know, I think as the labor force tightens, we're going to see increased pressure as everything reopens, and it's there could be some competitive advantages to us for maintaining a high level of staff year after year.
Yep.
Any additional questions? Well, hearing none, other topics before we move to adjourn this meeting? No. That is all we have on the agenda for today. We do not need to take roll call, so thank you all for your time this afternoon, and please let me know if you have any questions. Have a good day.
You get
Thank you.